Okay, this is how we deal with a puncture repair on your Evo scooter wheel. If you're unsure of how to remove the wheel from the scooter, or indeed refit it, there is a separate instructional video online that shows you how to do this. So assuming that you have removed the wheel, we'll go through how to repair the puncture. There are basically two different types of wheel. This is what we call a 9.5 inch wheel, and this is a 4-inch wheel. The only difference being is that the 4-inch wheel only has the 3 securing nuts and bolts screwing the rims together, whereas the 9.5 inch rim has 5, but whichever, the procedure is basically the same. First and foremost, if you've got a puncture, then obviously the tyre is going to be flat anyway, but it is very important that you make sure that the tyre is deflated before you carry out this operation of splitting the rim. So if there is any air, just press down on the valve and let any excess air drain from the tube before commencing. Having done that, you'll see that on one side of the wheel there are 5 nuts. I've already removed 4 of them for the sake of quickness. So the first job is to remove those 5 nuts with a 10mm socket. So basically we'll undo that last nut, assuming that we've taken all 5 off. Then we turn the wheel over and you'll see that there's 5 Allen screws which need to be removed. Again, for quickness, I've undone 3 of them already, so we'll quickly undo the others using a 5mm Allen key. Right, having removed them, the 2 halves of the rim can now be separated. On this particular one, they've kind of sprung apart to make it easier, but if the tyre's been on there for any length of time, you may have to get a proper tyre lever. Don't use a sharp screwdriver or anything, use a proper tyre lever, and if you insert that in between the rim and the tyre, you can just lever down until that rim comes free from the tyre. In that particular one, it needs threading back over the inner tube valve. Also note that there is a spacer in the middle of the wheel which needs to be removed. Then turn it over and do the same thing again. If you insert your tyre lever and just pry upwards, that will come free. So that leaves you 2 halves of your rim. At that point, the inner tube can be removed. So. Now, if you've got a puncture, the obvious thing to do for start is to thoroughly check the tyre and ensure that there's not any sharp nails or such like still sticking through the tyre. So if you very, very carefully feel around the tyre, firstly going round the side walls and then round the business part of the tyre, take your time and really carefully feel for any sharp edges. Turn round, check this side wall. Also, of course, if you've got a nice light or a magnifying glass, you can also study it with eyesight and look for any kind of a very shiny edge that might be a piece of metal which is sticking through. Right, so having done that, you get to the point of either repairing the tube that's got a hole in it or replacing the tube. Personally, I would recommend replacing the tube, being as the cost is not high, but the old tube can actually be repaired by using a cycle repair outfit and sticking a patch on it. But for the point of this exercise, we'll put a new tube in it. So we take the new tube, and you need to locate the tube into the walls of the tyre, as such. Now you notice when the tube's fully deflated, you're going to have bits of tube sticking out, which is no good for reassembling. So what you need to do is just put a tiny bit of air into the tube. I'm just using a normal cycle pump there, and carefully inflate it. Try that again. Carefully inflate it until the tube pushes back into the tyre wall and there's no tube protruding through where you're going to assemble the rim. So that is ready for fitting the rim. Right, so if you take the half with the hole in it that fits over the inner tube valve, pull the valve away and just slide it through the hole in the rim. Make sure it's pulled right through, and then that rim will snug down into the tyre. So that can be turned over. Always remember to replace this spacer. Very important that that spacer goes in there. Failure to do that will result in damage to the bearings when you reassemble the wheel into the scooter. Then very carefully align the other half of the rim with the first half that you mounted in. Visually get it lined up as well as you can so that all the 5 spokes kind of match. Then very carefully turn it over and the 5 screws can be replaced. What I recommend is just to start all 5 screws This will again help to align the 2 halves of the rim together. And basically what you need to do is tighten these in an equal manner so that the 2 halves of the rim are squeezed together equally. At the moment we've not quite touched the rim with that screw. Okay, that's just touching the rim now. Then move across to an opposite screw and do the same with that. Again, that's just touching the rim. Then do an opposite one again. So now I've got 3 screws which are basically pressing down equal. I'm also going to just nip those other 2 up a little bit. Then when you get to this point, it's important that you just screw them together a little bit at a time. I'm just going to do one there, turn there, and then sequence them in order so that the wheel goes together equally. This is important because there's a boss on one half of the rim which fits into a female on the other half. Right. Now again, those 2 can be tightened down as well. Now the rim's gone together. So turn her over again, and then you can replace all your 5 nuts. Make sure that all 5 screws are very tight, and make sure that the 5 nuts are tight. And then that wheel is ready for inflation once it's tightened, and then to be reassembled back into the scooter. And that's job done.